Yes, I come every year to use the reference library and also to read the newspapers because they have the entire collection here. It's a wonderful collection. Every year, people help me get reestablished in this repository. People are friendly. It's a great resource.
Well, I had a couple of questions to start with, okay? One of the standard greetings here at the Society is like, where are you from? It's one of the things I learned. Where are you from?
Exactly, Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware. My family, my mother and her family grew up in Saline County. So I come back here for research to do that. And they were early settlers in the Elmwood, Blackburn area in the mid-1850s, 1840s.
Do you still have a lot of family in Missouri?
None. Almost I have some third cousins who I met after I started doing research.
After you started. And when did you start doing the research?
In 2006 I began.
Why?
My mother had lived with me for the last 8 years. She died when she was 95 and had advancing dementia, so she lived with me, so I was very occupied. And then I just got interested reading old letters. Always have been interested in history and family history.
That's interesting that your mom lived with you toward the end of her life. Did some of her reminiscences or dealing with her, did that kind of make you want to fill in gaps, so to speak, for her?
I was very, very fortunate. My grandfather was born in 1860 and my grandmother was born in 1871. And my grandmother lived with us for the first 35 years of my parents' marriage. So it was a wonderful resource. She grew up on a farm in Missouri and became a teacher. And when my mother died in 2005, I contacted both the Kentucky and Missouri, the Kentucky Historical Society and the Saline County, Missouri Historical Society, because she had 3 uncles, not great uncles, but uncles who fought in the Civil War. And they think that she was the last person in 2005 who had an uncle in the Civil War. Because her father was born in 1860 and he was the youngest of 10 children, the older brothers who had fought. And we have very, very long generations in my family. And then she lived for 95 years. So that's an unusual pattern.
That's a very personal experience too that you're drawn from. It's interesting that your family has a history of longevity.
Yes.
And that you became interested in the genealogy. So, were you born in Missouri?
I was born in Delaware.
I see.
They had already moved to Delaware before with DuPont.
I see.
So before I was born.
And so, had you been back to Missouri much before you decided to research?
Twice, when I was very, very little. And I was.
How do you find it, Missouri? Did you connect with it?
I love it.
Why?
I just love it. The people are so warm and friendly. I called up the Blackburn Historical Society, which I think is basically one person, and he said, "Oh, you have a Martin cousin who still owns your family land." Gave me her number. She invited me to stay with her. I didn't, but that was, you know, invited me to stay. The people are exceptionally nice.
They have a lot of pride of place in Missouri. I was wondering, compared to growing up in Delaware, I grew up in Pennsylvania.
Where in Pennsylvania?
Scranton.
Oh, okay.
Of course, born and bred. But, you know, when I moved out here, the thing you like about it is the people. And once you get to know the people, you realize they're really attached to Missouri. I mean, they're very much a part of this thing.
Deeply attached, and they respect their history.
As confusing as it can be. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
So tell me more about the society. So once you started coming here, how's your experience here?
I just felt very, very much at home. Everyone has helps you. I had a research librarian last year who showed me so many resources that I was not aware of before.
How did you start researching? What material did you come to the society with, and what did you want to find out?
I had obituary dates, and I had some very well-researched family lines, so I knew what area and what research dates and the obituaries. And then they started. And the nice thing about this collection is that you can go to one, and I was doing some Saline County research. Well, then they moved to Butler. And then you can go right to the Butler papers of that same era and pull out that information. I don't know of any other place that you can do that without driving someplace and hoping that that particular microfilm is there. It's so wonderful to be able to walk right over to Butler. Then it said people had come from Clinton County, so I went over there. And the local papers were very good about posting local events and the happenings.
A lot of people don't realize that we have one of the largest press libraries in the world here, and that's very convenient when you're doing genealogy research, correct?
I've never experienced it any other place, where you can go right to Jasper County and find some information. It advances your research almost in a generation in a single day. By getting the names and writing down, you know how people, they say that your relatives always have a fan club, the friends, associates, and neighbors. And so by reading the paper, you develop very quickly, and I do Smith research, some of very complicated research, but you quickly develop the patterns, and you can see it on that research. And by reading obituaries and who came to funerals and the local happenings, you can solve complex issues.
You know, one last question from me. You've been at this during a real crucial period in the curating of information and cultural artifacts from the state. Technology is coming more and more into play. How have you seen things change, you know, since you started doing your research in the technology sense?
Well, I think Missouri, I was at 2 genealogical conventions this year, one in Philadelphia and one in Raleigh, North Carolina. And Missouri was lauded at both conventions for being the leader in the country, for putting information on the line. They have the death certificates online. It is so difficult to find death certificates in most places. And because of the immigration pattern, many family immigration patterns came right through Missouri. So to have, I don't know how the person got the idea that yes, we can digitize these and put them online. It's a marvelous resource. It solves complex questions because you find the informant name on there. Often it'll have mother and father's name if they're known. You can verify so quickly rather than to try to figure out which county, which is darn near impossible. Write to the county, pay $10, and try to find it out that way. It can, you know, and people lose interest. This you almost instantaneously have your information. Missouri should be applauded for doing this because so many states keep it under tight scrutiny.
Mm-hmm. When you go back to Delaware and you're here on a visit, will you be able to use some of the tools that you were talking about online now?
I use them all the time online.
Huh.
All the time online. I belong to Ancestry and Footnote, Heritage Quest, the Mid-Continent Library. If you just join the Mid-Continent Library, that you can type in the information and that they have lots and lots of online resources available that you can use at home.
That's great. It sounds like we fit right into that
You're a leader.
set of bookmarks.
Missouri is a real leader.